Good evening, Mr. Phelps. One person of interest in an emerging crisis is a person with whom you may already be familiar, Dr. Ralph Northam. He is the nation's only physician currently serving as a state governor. According to this former army surgeon, the nation is fighting a biological war against an invisible enemy, and, beginning on the 15th of March, even though the Virginia Department of Health, directed by Dr. Norman Oliver, who Northam had selected as the state health commissioner, fully aware that Oliver had graduated from a self-accrediting baccalaureate degree-conferring institution that required no college entrance exam, had assessed the public health threat as a low risk, he began to lock down the state under executive orders, beginning by prohibiting non-essential gatherings of more than 100 persons, which, by the 17th of March, he reduced to a prohibition on non-essential gatherings of 10 persons or more, subject to arrest and charging as a misdemeanor. And, by the 28th of May, Northam began to enhance the prevention posture of the state by mandating facial coverings in all public spaces, on the assumption that any person may be infected with a potentially deadly pathogen, and not even know it, because of what he described as asymptomatic infections. By Labor Day, Dr. Northam had conceded to the conclusions of Lindsay Seymour, a top-notch environmental engineer at Virginia Tech, who had argued along with 238 other scientists who had examined and/or authored countless case studies, that the primary means of transmission for the disease COVID-19 was not via transfer of medium to large droplets, measuring 5 to 10 microns during exhalation events, such as coughing, sneezing or talking, within 6 feet, but rather through aerosols, which particles are so small that the computational fluid dynamic qualities of these smaller particles enable them to remain suspended in the air for up to 2 hours. A necessary determination for Dr. Northam to have enacted any measure is the existence of a communicable disease that is found to be adversely impacting a defined affected area, but, to date, in public pronouncements, as well as in state and federal courts, this physician has only provided his assurances that the pathogen is a highly contagious disease, and the only evidence that he has presented is that, to date, over 387,900 persons have been infected, over 18,900 have been hospitalized, and over 5,300 have succumbed as fatalities, over half of whom were the elderly residing in nursing homes, along with disproportionate fatalities amongst persons of color, which he has attributed to structural racism that has caused inadequate provisions for health care. Since March, our agents have been attempting Northam to define the exact infectious dose, a necessary determination for those engaged in prevention of infectious disease, so that a sound plan may be developed, based upon the actual threat, in quantifiable terms, that must be prevented. Northam has also failed to articulate the exact infectiousness of the pathogen, usually stated as a percentage in a secondary attack rate that has been found among close tracer contacts, a priority task that he, for as yet unexplained reasons, chose to delay for months, rather than ramping up his operation at least by the end of January, when COVID-19 was declared a public health emergency of international concern. It was our hope that when Northam had invited Dr. Anthony Fauci, and he is the nation's leading infectious disease control expert, these questions would have been resolved, but, for whatever reason, Dr. Fauci took the opportunity to urge persons of color to volunteer for vaccinations, stating that that is the only way to develop herd immunity, despite the fact that the Chinese had begun to reopen their nation as early as 1 month after the lockdowns in the Hubei province, and declared a total elimination of the pathogen back in September, without any vaccinations nor fears that the pandemic pathogen will return. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, Mr. Phelps, is to examine the validated attack rates that have been determined through tracer contact studies of laboratory-confirmed cases of COVID-19.
This advertisement was authorized by Mike Webb.